What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Cinema Wave podcast here at the Culture Wave Media Network, and we are back to discuss season 4 of the acclaimed Hulu, FX on Hulu series, The Bear. It's one that pretty much I feel like everybody in the world, or America at least, has already seen the show. They're anticipating the next season, and they delivered again just last week. This season came out, and we're here to discuss the season at length with you guys. I'm going to be one of your hosts for this season and this episode. My name is Darian Scalamoni. I am joined by Vinny Albano.
Hello, hello.
And Megan Krantz.
Hi.
Megan and I return from the season 3 discussion, and we welcome Vinny to the table. Also, I think everybody here at the network is at least somewhat of a fan of this series.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember last year there was a big clamoring for how are we going to work out who's going to be discussing it. Now, ironically, it's shifted a bit in terms of this season, I think, because of a lot of the discussion that myself, Megan, and Liz had last season was that it was a bit of an underwhelming season by a lot of people's standards. I don't remember exactly, Megan, if you remember what score you gave it.
No.
You don't? Okay.
I do not remember what score I gave it.
I think you were in like the 6s, like high 6s.
I think so too.
I feel. And I gave it a score that I already stated before we started recording that I now think was too high. In hindsight, I still very much enjoyed the season. I enjoy the show. And I think I had said then, I was like, I still enjoy this show more than like what else is on television at the time. I think in hindsight, I would probably give season 3 a lower score, and I would probably bump up this season higher than what I initially would give season 3. As a little preview for what we're going to discuss on this. But Vinny, you have never had an opportunity to discuss the show on the network. So I want to give you a little bit of the floor to just kind of talk a little bit about what you like about the show and maybe just initial broad thoughts on what you thought about season 4 in its entirety.
Yeah, so this show means a lot to me. It's genuinely one of the few shows that I have grown so attached to in such a short period of time. I mean, when season 1 came out, I binge watched that and I was so excited for season 2, and I immediately binge watched season 2, and I was devastated. I was happy. It was an incredible rush of emotions from both seasons that immediately it jumped to the top of my list of like among TV shows that I've ever watched. And it means a lot to me personally. It also, one of my closest friends, I literally met her through talking about The Bear. It's like
real sentimental value.
Yeah, we were at a party, and I've never I didn't know she was a mutual friend at that point, but I never talked to her. And then we just started talking about The Bear, and now we're very close. So The Bear is dope. The Bear is awesome. Yeah. Season 3 though, right? Was not a big fan. I don't think it was bad, but it was a solid 6. I gave it a 6. And season 4, broad thoughts, much better. I'm actually surprised with how much negativity that the season 4 is getting, because when it first came out, I was seeing reviews that people were saying it's extremely redundant, 1 out of 10, terrible, I can't watch the show anymore. I sound like John Mulaney now. Shout out John Mulaney. And I loved this season. Yes, it has flaws, and yes, it's maybe not as good as season 2, because season 2 has an emotional peak that is going to be really hard to get to. But I think that's fine. I think we're going in a new direction that is fine. It's different. And it may not hit that emotional peak, but we should accept it and we should nurture it. And season 4 is really good. I had a good time with it.
Awesome. Megan, initial thoughts?
I am very interested that you were so passionate, Vinny, about season 4, because I think similar to Darian, I also remember, I think giving it maybe a 6, I'm just going to say, was probably around there as well. And I probably would put season 3 lower now after watching season 4, because I would put season 4 above season 3. I do think it was a step above, because season 3 I had very strong thoughts on. I really did not like the sudden change in pace and how slow everything was moving, and just this, stylistically, it was just drastically different. And I don't think as an audience we had any time to really adjust, so I think that was just very jarring. So I think they kind of found some footing in season 4. Like they kind of there were seasons, or there were episodes that did stand out to me, whereas season 3 didn't really occur. I kind of just felt like they were all just very emotional and very much just kind of like filler episodes. But yeah, I think I would definitely put this higher than season 3. That this is a show that I really did love, and season 1 and 2, like genuinely, like the end of season 2. My God, like I would go back and rewatch that last episode just to feel something again. Like that is how strongly I felt about it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that there are definitely some standouts, definitely some good things to talk about with season 4. I think that it's kind of followed similar patterns as season 3 a little bit. Like there were moments that just felt slow. I think the beginning started off a little bit slow, where I wasn't too interested. And then some like side plots that also I didn't find too interesting either or important, which we'll get into. But yeah, so I'm for the most part I'm a little bit indifferent, to be honest. But the ending definitely I think had me the most. Yeah, I think the emotion kind of came flooding through by the end, just the culmination of everything. But yeah. So how are you feeling, Darian?
I think you had brought it up, Megan, in the beginning of what you were just saying about how what this season did is it took elements of season 3 and also brought in elements of what was familiar to the audience early on to create this balanced season. Something that and you can look at that balance in a number of different ways, right? Like it feels often like a teeter-totter, not in a way where it's an emotional complexity, but it gets to a point where it starts in a way that is a lot slower than we've seen previously, and it's almost like it's giving the viewer kind of a break from the stress and the perspective of what season 3 did, where it focused mainly on Carm, where you had brought this up before we started recording, Vinny, and I don't want to take away all of this because this is a big part. I know what you want to discuss, but so much of what this season does is it gets us from this place of individuality with characters to a place of unity again.
Yeah.
And kind of showing the dynamic of why the bear resembles what the bear resembles, in terms of not Carmy as bear, but the bear as a meaning and the bear as an iconography in this world and in Chicago in this world. I think that it's hard because like season 1 was so long ago. Even though this is now they've released seasons like successive seasons year after year after year the same week for 4 straight years. But season 1 was such a long time ago for me that it's almost like I don't know if I play the recency bias thing because I'm like, I don't know, there are elements of this season that I like more than season 1. And season 1 is obviously a shorter season. They were working on probably the worst budget that they had at that point. They didn't have the massive cameos that we get in every other episode in the show. But I also agree, Megan, with what you were saying. It's not that I love that you have the passion for the show. I think that my passion for the show has waned a bit because of those decisions that they made from going from season 2 to season 3 to now season 4, where there are moments in this season where they find that footing, and we'll get into it as we start to talk about certain episodes. They still know how to do, like Christopher Storer still knows how to do that hour long better than any other person I know in television. And I think that it's ironic that so much of the show is structured in a way where it's like, we're going to give you like a 22-minute episode where almost like nothing happens. We're just kind of giving you the lay of the land. And you have these awkward cuts where you just like cut to somebody and someone just says something like that it resembles their character. And then we just cut away. And then you have these really poignant moments with characters where I don't know if there's anybody else in television that has the voice like Christopher Storer to reach those emotional points in a way that feels so authentic, not only to human beings in general, but these characters. And I don't know if that also speaks to like what you were saying, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on like the structure and the way that like you talked before we started recording again about how these characters mean something to you in a different way than like we've seen in any other television. Talk to me and Megan about like why you think that this season they succeeded in doing that in comparison to maybe last season or even like maybe season 1.
Yeah, I think overall, looking at each episode out of the 10 episodes, still, again, I do want to emphasize, although I did enjoy the season, there is some fatal flaws and certain structural choices, specifically episodes like 1 and 2, episode 2 specifically, are not good. But I like the word that you used to describe the season as balanced, because I felt very balanced with this season, and I think the structure attends to that, right? You have what people loved in season 2, that epic like Marvel crossover 1 hour episode.
Mm-hmm.
You have the intimate moments. You also have the funny, but not in like a John Cena fact way of like too much. Okay, guys, you're getting annoying now, but it's just enough. Like, I love the floating joke.
Yeah.
What are you doing with your hands? What are you doing with your hands? Right? I love that. So structurally, I think it's very balanced, and I think it attributes to the themes too, and that's to answer that other half of your question about connecting to why I feel so connected with these characters. The main theme of the season, family, unity, like you spoke on, and how finally I feel, although at times nervous and sad, I am balanced. And I'm like, okay, this is how I should feel, because when you're with people you love, that's how you should feel, right?
Mm-hmm.
There are going to be moments that
high points and low points.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And there will be moments like Sydney says, which is a big theme in this season again, is that you take your loved ones for granted, and in a sense you're almost more mean to your loved ones because you take them for granted. But through that difficulty that you guys each display, it almost grows your love even stronger. And the characters that I felt specifically during the wedding episode 6, I finally was like, oh my God, I knew I was connected to these characters, but I was like, oh my God, I view these characters, like the way that I was feeling inside, I view them so strongly that I view them as real friends of mine or real family members of mine. And to be brutally honest, I almost felt more of an intimate connection with these characters than I have with actual people who are significant in my life, as bad as that is to admit. But it is true. And I was like, oh my God, it's a testament to the structure of the season, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
However, there are low points where it feels repetitive, like episode 2.
Mm-hmm. Megan, before I just want to, I'll have another question for you, kind of a different one. One, I do want to hear your thoughts on the way that sort of the characters played in that dynamic of this season of family. But one of the things I remember about our discussion last season was the humor and how it started to beat you over the head, right? And you already brought up the facts. Yeah. I personally feel that this season, it almost feels like Christopher Storer heard the criticisms that came in from last season. Like last season, you look at it, like the structure Vinny talked about, like the structure of the season was something that like was all over the place. You get these 2 individual episodes with Ice Chips and the one with Mikey and Tina, but they come at kind of weird points in the season. Did you feel, for the second question, did you feel that in the edit? Like, did you feel that in watching it back and being like, oh, like I actually feel like I'm getting more comfortable again with the way that he is trying to balance this out. He's trying to give all of the characters their own space to navigate, because we get that hour-long episode that we miss out on in season 3. Like we get a gathering at the end of the season with when Carmy goes, which I know was an episode you and Liz hated. And I like that episode, the one where he meets the chef that gave him all his PTSD. You know what I'm talking about? So that was like a gathering sort of episode, but it was a different gathering. It wasn't the family that we know. So I'm just curious, the family element. And again, did you feel that Storer was able to balance this out a little bit more to the tone and what you appreciate wholly about the show?
I certainly think so. I think balance is definitely the right word, like we've been using in general, in terms of the way, that it was structured and the way it was paced. Because at least in this case, it wasn't like we had those standalone episodes with these single characters where everything else just like narrative wise it just stopped. Yeah. Exactly. So it was like, we just took a break in what story that was being told for like the constant flashbacks and just those like super introspective episodes just of like getting into like the psyche of these characters. But like at least in this case, in season 4, everything kept moving along. It was very obvious though what everyone was going through, and I think that like in terms of all these characters and the interactions they have with each other and the dynamics they have with each other, it felt a lot more like season 1 and 2 where things were still moving, like the narrative was still progressing, and like everyone is so vocal about how they're feeling the entire season. Like all I was thinking as I was just like, wow, like I feel like I am like a therapist right now. I'm like, I'm genuinely hearing out every single one of these characters because they're all dealing with something different internally that's really hard to like, you know, to vocalize or to deal with, and they're all kind of like hiding things from each other, and they all kind of, they do intersect. Like everyone's issues really do intersect, and obviously that all comes to like a culmination at the very end. So I think that is where I kind of feel like season, like how in the earlier seasons it was, you know, it felt right, it felt normal and natural, like it worked, and that is what I kind of like, I felt a little bit of relief watching this season because of that. But even with, and then there was nothing nearly as cringy or like as infuriating as the humor
John Cena
and John Cena. Yeah. Like there's nothing that struck a nerve like that for me in season 4, which is obviously a reason why it's like just like above
jump up,
season 3. Yeah. But I do think, however, just in general with the humor, at least for me, I kind of feel like it doesn't land or doesn't feel right sometimes when they have these like witty conversations in these very emotional, like vulnerable moments, especially when they kind of just happen suddenly. I don't know, it doesn't really like, I don't really find myself laughing at this show. If anything, it's like a pretty like, you know, sometimes I give it like an exhale, you know, like a
gotcha.
But I don't crack up. I don't know, I think that it's just so like, I mean, I cried, I absolutely cried, but I didn't laugh. I just think that, I don't know, the humor and then the deep like actual like emotional, you know, turmoil that we run into, I feel like it's a little bit inconsistent only when the humor comes in, and I kind of feel like it just doesn't really land. But yeah, that was kind of my only real like qualm in terms of like what we're talking about now and how how it usually is structured.
Well, I think it's good that you brought up the introspectiveness, because I do agree with you in terms of like looking back at what I thought about season 3. Like my 2 favorite episodes of that season are the flashback episodes, but it's because there is so much richness in the quality of those episodes. You know what I mean? Like the text is great. The conversations feel real. But all throughout the rest of that, and obviously Carmen is dealing with such a severe PTSD, and he lays it all out in this season, in the final episode of what he was going through, in a way that it's like you almost wish he did that at the end of last season to get us to a different point now in this season. And it lends itself to like the first half of this season not being necessarily bad, but having low points. Like within the first 5 episodes, I'm just looking back now. Within the first 5 episodes, I would say that probably like 3 or 4 of my least favorite episodes of the season fall in that first 5. And then the back 5, I think, have some really great high points.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that, again, that's why I don't know, like if that's why I brought up the analogy of the teeter-totter, but it feels like you're almost like going for a ride, and then all of a sudden you just kind of stall out. And you're like, oh, I'm at the bottom now, and now I got to work my way back up, and I got to put my weight on it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Go ahead.
I'm curious though if that feeling and the reason why we feel that way, and I agree that first half of this season, I'm curious if it is just now that we're forgetting also the low points of season 1, 2, and 3, right? Because I do feel now I'm not almost informed at this current moment to answer this question correctly. So this is kind of assumption because I haven't rewatched season 1 or 2 in a bit.
Yeah, me too.
So. But I do feel like there were times in season 1 and 2 when we did have episodes, and I could be wrong, but I feel that we had episodes that were just kind of like, you know, set up, or just kind of like quick, like, okay, this is happening. But now we think back on such the highs of season 1, like the ending of season 1, or fishes, or forks, right, or ice chips. And those crazy highs that now we are expecting that for every single episode of the season.
I think
get what I'm trying to say?
I totally do. I think that's fair, because part of it is the wondering of like, is he trying to be intentional with the way he's presenting the show? Because so much of it, so like when you brought up like the humor thing, for me, it's almost like I come from a big family. Like my mom's side of the family, there's literally 45 of us, including like cousins and everything. So it's funny again, like so much of it is like that prevalence of cousin and that found family element to what it is.
Yeah.
And I think that's why, I don't know if you were a similar thing, but like that wedding episode, not that it got me necessarily to the same emotional depths that I think it got you to, but it got me to a place where it's like, this is the way that it is for some people. Like they're literally like found family. Like it's like that I have a cousin that is like adopted who literally is treated as if he's literally blood. And so like that kind of thing you see with the dynamic of Richie, and you see it like where even Sydney gets to a point where she calls Oliver Platt's character Unc towards the end of the season, and it has that found family element to it. And I wonder if it's just because what we're getting is like, I don't know if I said this on camera or off camera, but it gets like so much of what this season gets is maybe that it gets too repetitive. It gets to those points like you talked about, Vinny, where it's like we want to see these characters get to different heights, even though we still love that element of being the fly on the wall. That so much of it is almost nothingness. Like I don't know if you said this again on camera or not yet, but like episode 2, there's a lot of nothing.
Yeah.
You know, and it feels like even in the development of what season 1 might have been or what season 2 was, we were discovering these things about these characters, and now we're at a place where it's just like, oh, they just like running out of money again. And we've seen this before. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know if that answered your question or not. Or
I feel just to kind of comment, I want to talk about episode 2 specifically.
Okay.
I didn't mind, although I do think episode 1 is kind of on the weaker end amongst the lists. I didn't mind it because it's like, okay, this is just setup, right? Setup. Episode 2, there was no new information given to us other than the farmers market. Like they need to start rationing their ingredients, and the Francie setting up Francie for the wedding of like, oh, there's this character that we haven't met yet called Francie, who is played by Brie Larson and whatnot. But everything else that happened in that episode was literally just, it was not new information. It was nothing new. It was just kind of, and also that cold opening. Holy shit, that was terrible. I hated that cold opening. With
the one,
that was the
one with Io.
Yeah,
That he was
that
talking about
was
before.
the Sydney music video. Is that pink lights and like I don't know what was going on. I don't know the vibe. There was no metaphor. I don't care what anyone says. There was no metaphor.
No.
Yeah.
Was that the same episode where Carmi is just sitting contemplating for a while and Richie finds him just kind of sitting there contemplating? Actually, I feel like that happens multiple times. But
I
was
believe
that
so,
the same
actually.
episode?
I think it is.
Yeah.
No, I think it only happens once because this other time they sit together is after he goes and sees his mom.
Right, and that's much later.
That's the second to last episode of the
Because
season.
I'm remembering it happening much earlier as well.
Yeah, which again, that's ironic that it's like bookending, right?
Yeah.
Like it's the second episode of the season and the second to last episode of the season that we get the parallel of that same situation.
Right, so that's why it kind of seems like it might be intentional.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that. Because, like, what I was thinking was, like, I think that season 1 and 2, based on what I remember, because I also have not watched either season in a while.
We
but
all require a rewatch very soon. We all need to sit down and rewatch it.
I agree. But it was so, like, it was so fast and so much was happening, and it was genuinely chaotic. We spent so much time in the kitchen hearing them argue and everything like that, and I think then, like, kind of what I was talking about with like the humor and the wittiness and the bickering or whatever, it worked better almost then because it just kind of like was just like all sort of just flooding together and it kind of worked. But like in these seasons, it's like, for example, like the long take episode, we've never seen anything like that. But in that case, it was literally just like, it was so fluid and it was so dynamic. But like the reason I bring up the one scene of Richie and Carmi at the table, which is also like I'm pretty sure it was right after that like random like montagey like scene that Vinny was just talking about. But it's like they're all locked off shots and we're kind of just observing them. And it feels a little bit detached, and I just kind of felt a little bit disconnected because of that almost. And it kind of like, I think about those highs like we were talking about in the earlier seasons where it was just so dynamic and so energetic and there was so much going on, to where like now we're kind of just like stuck in this like 2 shot and they're just talking about how they feel. when I already know how they feel. I've known how they felt for a while, you know, especially when we're that early in the season. They're not revealing any new information. I think that's even more so why I was like just kind of like frustrated by how it was still moving slow in the beginning. So yeah, I that's just what I picked up on. Like and
I can understand that, because even the thing, like, I don't know, like I was getting annoyed with Sid in the first few episodes. Like I was getting to a point where I was like, we already know this thing with Shapiro.
Yes.
Like what? Like, can we get an answer at this point? And it literally takes 8 episodes of this season to get there.
Right.
And for me, the biggest turning point was right before that, or I guess it is the halfway point, because it's episode 5, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly. It's the episode called Replicants, where they bring everybody back. Like they bring Will Poulter back. They bring back or he might have came like an episode or 2 later, but they bring back all of the team from Forks that Richie meets. And you start to get this dynamic again where you see that they're trying to do something differently. And it kind of builds that momentum in a natural way where it's like, oh, okay, we're not going to just keep trying to do things the way that they're obviously not working. You know, like we're going to try to actually change up the vibe. And I don't know if, again, like maybe it's the episode before that when they come in with Computer and Oliver Platt's character, where they give them that hypothetical parachute.
That was the first episode.
Is it the first episode? Yeah. So like,
that's
the other thing. Like, I'm not like, there are elements of the first half of the season that literally blend together because it doesn't feel like they're individualized in the episodes like they used to be previously. The second half of the season, there are a lot of elements that I can remember specific things from specific episodes because they serve a bigger point to the overall narrative. And I think going back to what you were saying, Vinny, it's almost like, yes, the highs and the lows existed, but it almost feels like for a show that's so smart, they went in a direction with season 3 and some of this season where they give it like unnatural filler. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, I totally get that. I don't want to pivot the conversation into a different...
Pivot away.
Okay. Because I guess it's akin to everything we've been talking about, the structure, the editing, everything. One thing that I really noticed, actually I noticed it in season 3. I think it's much better than it was in season 3. But Christopher Storer's style almost begins to parody itself. It feels very
I noticed that
self-indulgent. And like I said, it's better than season 3. Because season 3 was rough.
Like montage heavy. And
But season 4, there are some moments where I'm just like, specifically, that's the thing though. He has such an incredible style where I love it at points. It's so intimate at points. And it's so energetic. And it's like, I love this. And then there's moments where conversations, because he loves to intercut conversations with other conversations, and it's just like, oh my god, this is fucking up the flow completely. Or just like, obviously the way he writes dialogue is so unique and it's so real, but it almost feels parodied because then there's lines like when Uncle is talking to, I believe, Jamie Lee Curtis's character on the other side of the door at the beginning of episode 3. And it's just going on, and he's just beginning to say like weird shit. He's like, just come out here. You kick me in the balls. You can just kick me in the balls. Just come on. You just have my way or have your way. Like, I'm like, what? Okay, dude. Like, stop. Just cut the scene. Stop talking. Like, that's another flaw that I had with this season. However, like I said, it's not as bad as season 3 because season 3 really overindulged in it, and it's still so intimate at moments where I'm like, ooh, I love it. So
yeah, no, I would agree with what you're saying. I think that at some points it's almost like he loses himself to what he's established.
Yes.
Instead of going forward, like you've talked about, Megan, with the story, like getting us to a place where it's like, do we need, like, the intercutting of conversations also, like, I almost feel like I didn't even, I'm not saying it didn't exist in season 3, because again, it's a season now that I look back at it and I'm like, I really don't remember much from it other than the solo episodes and Carmy having a fucking panic attack every other episode, you know? Yeah. But in this season, I felt like I was seeing it a lot more in that first half of the season. And in that second half of the season, we actually leave a lot more opportunity to let the characters breathe, which we don't see that often in The Bear. What I was going to say was, because you brought up how he does such a good job with working with multiple characters, right? I don't disagree with you, but I think I talked about this either in our review last year or I was talking about this when I talked off camera with somebody about season 2. But he has a similar dynamic to what the Safdies do, who are like some of my favorite directors in terms of the energy and in terms of the like. You literally feel an anxiety and a vibration sometimes when you watch certain episodes of the show. But what makes it so much more difficult, and it's a testament to that he's even trying, but he's trying to do that with an ensemble, with characters that we've already touched upon. Like, you care about these characters. Almost every, like, I don't think there's a certain character. I mean, again, like, you guys might feel different. Like, I care about Neil Fak. Like, it's a character that has an established personality, even as him being a silly person and him being this character that needs to be treated like he's a child. Like, he has his own personality, and so he needs to speak a certain way. But then Richie needs to be a certain way, but he also needs to be more introspective with the way that he handles things with his daughter, and he handles things with his daughter's stepfather and his ex-wife, and now this person he works with at service that there seems like there's romantic tones with. You know what I mean? Like, there is so much to balance while still having that style that it almost can, like you said, it can lead to these moments of being self-indulgent because you're just trying to get through. You know what I mean? Like, there's so many characters you have to follow. And I talked about this last season with you guys. Like, there were characters last season that I felt like we didn't get enough of. And I hated that. You know, like I was like Lionel Boyce's character, Marcus. Like, last season I was like, where is more Marcus? I want more Marcus. I want to know more about him. And he gets his moments in this season, which I think is great. Ibra never had really a lot of moments in the first 3 seasons, and he gets like a great side plot, I think. Where he starts to establish himself as understanding who he wants to be and how he can contribute to the Bear in general. So just going back to like what you were saying, I think that it's that element of like trying to balance too much. You know what I mean? And it gets to a point where it's like, as a writer, like, how do you get all these characters involved again and bring in new characters? Like, again, Rob Reiner is in this season.
Yes. Like, I really want to talk about that.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we were getting to that point anyway. But like, Rob Reiner in this season, Brie Larson gets a cameo. You bring back Bob Odenkirk for what I think is one of the strongest scenes in maybe the whole show. Yeah. With the conversation between him and Jeremy Allen White, two like real acting powerhouses. And then obviously the Jamie Lee Curtis scene, which we'll get to. But Megan, talk to me about the cameos, kind of bouncing off of what we're talking about. Just jump right in.
In terms of cameos, I was very excited about most of them this season. Like, I mean, just like to briefly mention, like John Mulaney, I love him. I was very excited to see him. Brie Larson, I was also very pleasantly surprised to see. But Rob Reiner is a beloved director of mine. Like, I mean, When Harry Met Sally is my favorite film of all time. And when he is introduced as like when his guest appearance is like revealed, like the first time we meet him in the show, it's the same episode where Carmy finally goes to Claire and tries to make amends with Claire. And I didn't see this anywhere. I didn't read anything yet. In fact, I literally just finished watching the show like shortly before we started recording this. But when he runs to her apartment or her place the same way that Harry runs from his apartment to Sally at the New Year's Eve party in the last 20 minutes of that movie. And I was like, is this intentional? Am I picking up on some kind of homage? Because I'm pretty sure I am. Not that it had as much of like, you know, it wasn't like it happened in the finale where it kind of where the stakes felt as high, I guess, maybe. Like the same way they happen like at the end of the movie of When Harry Met Sally. Like, it just kind of, it didn't have like the same level of stakes really, because it was, I guess because it's just not nearly as like iconic. It was just like that moment in one episode of television versus like, you know, like the most iconic rom-com of all time. But like, I rest my case. But like that was just a really special episode to me, because I also really do love Claire and Carmy's relationship, and I was really disappointed in season 3 that it would just never, like, that was it ended with such an intense emotional moment in the freezer, and he confesses, you know, everything, and just how he just is like basically self-destructing and self-sabotaging his relationships with people, including her, and then it's just nothing. Season 3, we just don't touch on it, and that's like where my, you know, anger for like how like the narrative is just not moving the way I wanted to. So
Mhm.
like that was for me at least like something I really cared about. And like when I actually got to see that in that episode in particular, I was really excited, and I just really loved the conversation that they had. And I feel like Carmi started to just like this entire season, he's making amends. He's kind of coming to terms with what he's really going through. And I think we do see a lot of growth in his character, which I mean, I think we'll get into more of for sure. But like, I just think like, Rob Reiner shows up, and then the next thing you know, like some switch just like we just flick some switch, and then like we just move forward the way I personally was really excited for.
Yeah.
I can't really tell you though what like his character was very random to me though. I'm like I don't really understand.
Just a
necessarily.
consigliere to Ibra. That's literally what he is.
Yes. So like I kind of was like, I mean, I don't really understand. Like I didn't like that was another one of those side plots where I'm like, is this necessary? I don't know how much I care that much about that plot in particular. But him as a guest star, I really was excited for, and the rest of that episode, I was very like ecstatic about.
Yeah, well, it could serve a role in the future again of like how they might start to profit the best that they can and actually make the business continue.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I do think it can have a role later on, and I do think that's part of the reason that Storer puts in that conversation with him and Computer at the end, where they both have the same kind of thought process, and Computer is always the one that's driving things forward in terms of if the business will survive with him and Uncle. But I do want to touch, Megan, you talked a bit at the end of that about how Carmi is making amends with a lot of things. And I thought the coolest thing that they did with this season and with Carmi in general is that they didn't present it as like he's going to transform into this whole different thing and he had a revelation and you know what I mean? Like that's so like by the book. It's so like
yeah.
He says constantly in this season that he's trying to do things. And you see how there are moments where he like does kind of fall on himself. There's a lot of moments in this season with Jeremy Allen White where he is almost stumbling over his words because you're seeing the anxiety come out in a way where it's like he doesn't want to say the wrong thing, but he also wants to leave space for people to express themselves so that he can feel his emotions and then he can get things out the best way that he can.
Yeah.
And I'm curious for both of you guys, like his performance in this season honestly might, again, I have to rewatch the seasons, but I do think that this might be his best performance in the show because it shows both sides of who Carmi is on a platter. You know what I mean? Like you're seeing the artisan, like the thing with the cooking, and even when he gets to a point at the end of the season where he basically is like, I don't enjoy this anymore. You get the other side of it in the episode before that where he does something for his mother, and you can see just in the presentation of the meal that the love is still there, you know, and it's like him having the conversation with, which again, bookending, like the conversation with Michael in the beginning of the season, why that's important to get us to where we end up at the end of the season. So Carmi in general this season, Megan, starting with you and then Vinny will jump with you. Like, how did you feel about the way they presented his emotions for the character? Because we, like you said, we didn't really see that at all in season 3. It was just him freaking out all the time.
Yeah, like I guess in a way, him freaking out all the time was kind of, I guess, maybe the transition into this like new Carmi, because I mean, again, like the fact that I haven't seen season 1 and 2 in so long, it's like kind of like hard to really get the scope of like how he transitioned, like how it felt the way he's transitioned as a character. But I will say that like there were several times during the season where even I was just surprised by his behavior, but like in like a way of like if I knew him personally and he was doing something,
you'd be proud of him.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. Like I actually felt proud of him, and like I absolutely felt the times where he left space for people. Like he was not freaking out the way he always would, where he would just immediately act upon his emotions and he would just scream and accuse and everything was falling apart and he was freaking out all the time. Before that, he would just take a second and he was actually very quiet, and he had a lot of these moments where he was just in silence and he was just kind of thinking. I think he was thinking a lot more than he was just speaking, and that is like a very productive way to go about things, especially, you know, in this sense where you have so many different dynamics with friendship and family, and you're trying to run a business and there's a lot of stakes involved, and the history is really, really, you know, it's deep, it's grim, even just like, you know, the broad just ideas that are thrown around, just like the fact that, like, you know, with the clock itself, like time is always ticking. You know, like he's no longer taking people for granted, because I think he realized everyone around him is there to support him, and like they're the reason, you know, that they've gotten to this point. And he's, I think, became the character now that he's become because of the influence of Sydney and everybody else. That's just kind of made him realize that he cares about these people, and Claire, like, he cares about these people, and he realizes that he's doing himself a disservice by not listening and taking in what they're saying, so that way he can feel, because their emotions matter as well as his. And I think he does come to that conclusion in this season. So I'm very proud of him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I love that. Vinny?
Yeah, my exact thoughts. I mean, you nailed it. Like, you took exact everything Megan said.
That's crazy. Yeah.
Carmy's growing, and
Yeah.
I think excuse me, sorry. Carmy is growing, and I think that is going to help the naysayers who say this show is being redundant, because now I cannot see this show not being, or sorry, I don't know how to word it specifically correct grammar wise, but there is not a point from this season forward, if they do a season 5 and what more, where the show will be redundant, because now we're in a completely fresh new direction.
Yeah.
Carmy has grown, he is showing growth, and he's left the bear, which is like, what direction can you go that is redundant, which is good. That's a good way to be.
Yeah.
Like,
That's a good point. Yeah.
yeah, and let have him have his Batman arc. I don't know, go to like Thailand.
Put on a cow.
Of course you
Just
bring
go
it
to
back.
war.
Islam, when he's like, throw your child in Pakistan, or Dagobah, 2-3 years, forget, right? Like, that's what we need with Carmy, you know? Let him do it.
I think that I agree in terms of so much of what that second half of the season just indicates is that everybody is in a season of change in this show to some extent. You know what I mean? Like that. So we haven't touched upon the wedding episode, but I think we should.
Oh yeah.
Because it's our hour long that we get this season, which we didn't have in season 3. And it's this dynamic that you start to see the elements of why it's important for all of these characters to get together at this point, and why it's important for them to be all there for this person, which is so funny because it's Richie's literal ex-wife.
Yeah.
Like, this is somebody that in a lot of circumstances, a lot of families would neglect this person, right? Like, even regardless of the fact that they have a child together, like, they'd be like, why would I go to this guy's ex-wife? Like, that they're not my family anymore. You know what I mean? And that's a big theme of this episode. It's a big theme, like you said, Vinny, of this season.
Yeah.
And it's actually, like, for me, like, I have like an aunt who is like my uncle's ex-wife, who like is still a part of our family to an extent. Like, even like he went to her, like, it's very similar to like my dynamic. So it's like I also felt a special connection to that. But you see it play out in this way where you see all of the characters have these moments with other characters and understanding why, regardless of how messy a family dynamic can be, no matter how fucked up a family dynamic can be, at the end of the day, you can always go back to these people because it's comfortable with being familiar, you know? And I thought that was such a beautiful thing that you see. And it's wrapped up in this bigger sense where you get the scene under the table with Richie's daughter. And I just think it's so fun to see also all these actors come together to do these kinds of things, you know, like these intimate moments. Like you brought up John Mulaney, like he's I mean, I also love John Mulaney so much, and he always serves such a great role, and he has that really intimate moment with Carmy where he's like you were the best roommate ever, we never saw you. And he's like, no, he goes, we were able to play a role in how you became who you became. And like that's important, and that's like a conversation that like that means a lot to a person, you know, like even to express that on screen. Those are conversations that like are very intimate, and those are conversations that like only could happen with people that you deem as family. So Vinny, I know this is probably, I don't know if it's your favorite episode of the season, but it's definitely a standout for you.
It's up there.
So I would love to hear your thoughts on that episode in general and just kind of some of the themes that came with it.
What shocked me so much, and I covered a lot of my broad thoughts of this episode and why I deem it so important earlier when I was mentioning how this was the episode where I really realized how truly connected I am with these characters and how real they feel and how I feel as if I'm one of them. And not to sound like a crazy parasocial fanatic, but like in a testament to the writers, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But another thing on why that feeling exists and why I love this episode is you see the hour runtime. You know it's gonna be a huge Marvel crossover. It's gonna be the big one. And up to this point, every time it was the big one, it was always a Debbie Downer. So you're almost expecting some crazy, and they even poke fun of it because they know you, as the audience member, they know you're expecting craziness to break down, right? John Mulaney has that joke with Josh Hartnett's character of so many Bearsados. You don't know what you're in for.
Yeah.
And then you as the audience is like, oh no. But it's a joke because in the end, it's actually very positive. And that's what I loved about it, is the fact that you expect some crazy shit to happen, but it doesn't. And instead, something so sweet, something so pure that only we as humans can experience. You know, something so unique to the human experience that it's just beautiful.
Megan, thoughts?
I totally agree. I like the fact that they were all under the table and it didn't feel claustrophobic. Like it felt as though I was there, like with them.
Yeah.
And I actually, prior to watching the episode, I didn't know what the runtime was. And I checked, I had like 9 minutes left. I was like, why? I kind of feel like this has been a long time. And then I was like, oh my God, like I didn't even know what I was getting into. But I think that is like a testament to how great the episode really was, because I just was kind of just vibing. Like I really just felt like I was there, and I wasn't, you know, like it wasn't a crazy episode. I wasn't stressed out. I was actually kind of just enjoying the characters, and just like that whole conversation where they all just go around and they like say what they're afraid of. I thought that was just such like a beautiful moment. And I especially love that like everybody just kind of keeps like finding them, and they're like, oh, this is where you guys are. Like, oh, like that. It was just kind of sweet to me. But that also interrupts Carmy's time to speak. And I just thought it was so clever that he like gets interrupted like 3 times before he actually gets to say what he's afraid of. And then and then he finally gets to do it, and like they just circle back to him finally, but like they just kind of continue going around without him, and then they go back to him again at the very end. So like I just thought that was just so clever, and I honestly was just like sitting there like, yeah, like this is kind of what the audience has been playing around with, but except it's kind of just being literally laid out for us in such like a sentimental way of just like this family all together. And then the fact that they took a picture, I was like, oh, like, not that I have it, not that it's in my phone.
But you wanted it.
I totally, like, I would have done this. Like, I wouldn't have let everybody leave either. I would have been like, wait. This is absolutely way too perfect and way too wholesome for us not to take a picture. But it didn't feel disingenuous. Like, it felt like that this absolutely could be something that would happen in real life.
Yeah.
So I actually was a big fan of the episode as well.
Yeah. I had brought up before about how I said, like, it's almost like all the characters are going through the season of change. But so much of what this episode I feel resembles is that season of healing. And they do a great job in the bigger sense where, like you brought up, Megan, like everybody gets to go around and say what they're afraid of, and putting everybody in this situation where there's togetherness, and it's beautiful because everybody is there to support one another. But what Christopher Storer still does is he gets every single character to have that moment, even if they're not in that circle, which is why I love this episode so much. And it might be my favorite of the, again, probably because it's more hopeful and you care about the characters. But even like the conversation, you can name all of them. The conversation between Uncle, again, I think I forget, is it Uncle Jay, Oliver Platt's character, the one who's funding the restaurant? I forget. But Uncle, Uncle and Richie have a conversation where they talk about the importance of just being there for one another. And again, he takes his ex-wife's hand and when they dance together to show, and she says something to him about why that's important. She has her moment with Sarah Paulson's character. The Bob Odenkirk and Jeremy Allen White scene I could observe for maybe the rest of my life every day, because there's so much to the layers of that conversation too, and the healing of what comes in the Thanksgiving episode, because Carmy's outlook on him for his entire life from that point forward was, this is the guy that partially might have ruined my brother's life. This is the one that might have driven my brother and my mother to these points of like, I can't even feel like a part of this family anymore. I need to get away. I can't come back. And to get that revelation of, one, that he's the only one that knows this big secret of Carmy, that he showed up at the funeral and he never told anybody, giving a deeper sense of like that trust, which Carmy probably needed. But then that other layer of being like, you know what? I also became very good friends with Michael at the end. And like, it was just, he goes, and how he owns up to the fact that he's like, I stopped trying to be his father. I just tried to be a friend. Yeah. And there's just so much beauty in that episode because it is still so real. Even the Jamie Lee Curtis talking to Io about what that means. And is Carmy happy? Why do you like working for him? Like, that's her way of coping. That's her way of healing. And when we go from that episode to a couple episodes later with Tanato, which is the penultimate episode of the season. And I had said this off camera. I have no problem admitting this as a man. I weeped. Like the conversation that we get between Jamie Lee Curtis and Carmy, or Jeremy Allen White, in terms of how it starts in this layer of, again, family, right? Showcasing these family members and what they mean to each of them, to then get to a point where she holds herself very accountable and she's responsible for the way that she had been and how that led to the way she was treating all her kids. That's an episode to me that, again, is like one of these standouts. Like, this season had a lot of good episodes, but also these two standout episodes that could entirely, like you said, change the trajectory of where we're going to go if we decide to continue on with this show. So what did you think about the kind of penultimate episode that, again, eventually leads us into the finale that we get?
It's incredible. I mean, Jamie Lee Curtis, I'm not going to lie. That's the thing. Her character is annoying, like on purpose. And I've met people exactly like her. I know there's a person significant in my life who is almost identical to her. And, but it's so good. Like, she portrays it so perfectly. And I almost wish I had more to say about Tanato. But it's going back to that conversation we had about character growth, Carmy's growth, Dee Dee's growth here. We're seeing characters finally grow and learn and achieve some semblance of peace, which is beautiful.
Yeah, Megan?
So I feel similarly. I feel like I actually also don't have much to add on that particular episode because, like, I did feel like the same kind of, like, there is like that parallel going on where like they're growing at the same time, and just the fact that like he cooks her a meal and it's just this like sweet moment. I genuinely was like, wow, like this is really special. And this is again another moment where we've taken a very big step for each of these characters that they are able to get to this point, and they're able to just like, you know, it's the same. It's like, it genuinely is that way with family. Like when you have these moments where things are not good and then you can recover from them because you're family. And at the end of the day, like, you know, you're family, you love each other, you find a way, you know, to come out of that. I just think that was kind of what that was literally, it was like, that's like the framework just for how the season played out in a way, especially with their relationship. But I actually think that, I forget which episode it was, but it was earlier. The one where Sid's dad has a heart attack. That was the episode for me that had me crying. Because I was genuinely weeping with her, like, simultaneously. It was actually kind of like a really crazy experience. I was like, I was like, whoa, okay. I was like, calm down, like, I let her have her moment. Because like I was literally
calm
crying.
down, let her have her moment. That's funny.
No, because like, and genuinely, like, that's totally what I thought. Because like, I don't even know what came over me, but like, that I thought was like, that was an important moment for Sid, because I think she realized at that point, like, I don't know what I would do if I lost like my dad. He's my rock, you know, like, and especially with all the chaos with the restaurant, and now these people are also like becoming her family. Like, it was just kind of like at that moment, I think that was the time she felt the most alone. And I just find it interesting, like, we have this like father and daughter moment, and then also this like mother and son moment later in the season, and both of them are very, like, you know, emotionally driven, and they kind of reach like this moment where like the stakes just feel really high, or they kind of just both realize, I think, in each instance where they can't take one another for granted. And I feel like that like is a recurring thing, but like I do see similarities in both those scenes I'm mentioning. But yeah, I personally, for me, that scene, that episode with Sid and her dad really got me. Like, that was the episode for me. Like, yeah.
I think that so much of what those two episodes in general kind of lay out, and it's something that like you had brought up too, Megan, about like the pace, right? And how, like, I think what it does is it puts the characters in a place where they have to be present, and it's okay for the show to slow down in those moments, because it's something that, again, means something about the way that the characters are developing, and you're seeing the real growth happening. And I think that in like, even like you brought up like the Sydney thing, right? Like Sid seeing Claire at the hospital when that happens, and kind of putting it, just being present in that moment of how her emotions are, instead of like so much of it as an audience is like, oh, she's clearly dealing with a lot of shit. Like, you know, that Sid is thinking about the Shapiro thing, and she's like, can I work at the Bear? But like, I want to enhance my skills, and am I improving? And I haven't answered my father in forever, and I need to get my hair done, and all these things that all kind of just pours out of her cup, you know, in that moment of being present. And it's just, to me, a more authentic resemblance of what a breakdown is,
Totally,
in comparison to what we see in season 3, where everything is just this like festering, and then you end on a cliffhanger. And then it's like, where are we going from here? Like, that's where you're gonna leave us. And I think that's a good way to just transition into the final episode, and then give our final thoughts, basically. But that last episode, it's a 3-person discussion with our 3 central characters. You have, it starts as an obvious conversation between Sydney and Carmy, and then Richie enters the conversation that Carmy wants to quit the Bear, and he's trying to do that to work on himself, and he realizes that he cannot be good for what that restaurant needs to grow, and he is the one that's putting the obstacles, and had put the obstacles in the way. And he's not in love, again, with cooking anymore. He just needs to find his own way, and he wants to sign the restaurant over to Sid and Sugar. And then Sid obviously eventually wants to bring Richie in after he joins the conversation. But for you, Vinny, what did you think about the way that the season ended? There have been rumors, again, early rumors, the season just ended, but there's been rumors that they don't have a shooting date in place for a season 5. They have the cast agreements for season 5, which means they can do it. But there's also a lot of these actors have grown to new heights because of the success of the show, and are all very busy. So what are your thoughts on the way that the season ends, and the future of the Bear, if you think where that'll lay us and take us going forward?
Yeah. So the last episode, I like how you, at the beginning of the review, you mentioned how you said that all the growth culminates at the end. And that's what I saw the most. You know, Carmy is admitting his faults, Sydney's admitting her faults. They're all being so vulnerable, and you captured that really well before. It's really interesting to see, you know, spending so much time with them for the last few years, to see them still fighting, but in a way that before they were like this, but now they're fighting with their arms open, right? And they're being vulnerable with each other. And I did not mind the last episode. I really enjoyed it. I think overall, as a big, long, you know, it's one location, all dialogue, all one conversation. It did not lose pace for me. It flew by, and I feel like I like that. I like that. I have a feeling people may be disappointed with that because they're expecting like those big epic finales, like the season 1 finale where they find the money in the Tomaticons. I don't know why I said it like that, but right, or season 2 when the opening of the bear, the crazy climax of the season 2 finale, and even season 3, like the meeting and the culmination of all these chefs and Carmy having to combat his PTSD and all that, right? Not as crazy on scale, but I think it hits just as equally as the first 2 seasons finales, right? I was very emotional when Richie came out there and Richie was like about to hit him. And he has a great line of dialogue. It's like, "There's no refrigerator door between us. Like, I'll start swinging on you." And it's really good. And to answer that second part of your question, like where we go from here, I'm going to go back to what I said earlier in the review of how where we go from here is really exciting because we're in a situation where the show has to pivot into drastically different corners that we haven't explored yet. And that's exciting because now we're getting away from redundancy. And, you know, with the actors being so busy, it is to assume that we're not going to get a season 5 as quick as we got this season. And that's good because then Christopher Storer can kind of leave the material for a while. And the creatives behind this show can think, and we'll get a new perspective hopefully when we return.
Megan.
Yeah. I definitely think that I will be reiterating a little bit what you said there because I think like fighting with open arms was such a good way to put that because like they, you know, it starts out so intense that last episode where like you kind of almost anticipate like this is going to be some huge blow up, but it actually ends up being more so of a conversation than an argument. And the fact that there is no refrigerator door between them and he could swing on him, but he doesn't. Like all of those things are literally that culmination of just how much these characters have grown and the fact that the 3 of them can be in this room together and have this conversation and confess all of these things and just like actually be very productive of an ending, even though it was a little bit unconventional, I think, like, or like based on what we're used to when seasons end. I mean, season 3, I don't even know what you'd call that. You know what I mean? But, but like, I think that is like really important to know with that episode and just the fact that like, I mean, I had a very, I didn't really have a typical like sit down watch for that last episode. I was like kind of listening to it on the way here. So I definitely intend on like sitting down and really just like watching how they move around that space and how they interact with each other in that space, just like in terms of their body language, because I think that's really important as well because there is like a softness around this argument and these confrontations. So I just think that's really interesting here. And just the fact that it does happen in one space, I think is just like, that's really all you need because these actors just do that phenomenal of a job where they just need each other to pull that off. And I just think that like, that is like truly so special about that episode. And then that's just a whole nother reason where like, obviously now it raises the question, like, what are we going to do without Carmy? What are we going to do without Jeremy Allen White? Everyone's kind of like, you know, maybe anticipating like he's going to leave the show. He's going to like not, but it, like, that's not even necessarily true. And I also don't even think that Hulu would even like, you know, go to that point because of how much success they've had with him as an actor and how many awards he's won solely off of the show. I just think that would be a really crazy choice. And I just don't really foresee that happening necessarily. And I also wouldn't want it to happen because like he's literally like the primary reason like why like I started loving the show as much as I did, and then the characters kind of followed suit after the fact. But yeah, I agree. I think it genuinely leaves a lot of room now for like this show to not be so repetitive or redundant the way I guess it was kind of starting to feel. But I do think that the audience may have been losing sight of the fact that like actually things are changing and there is now room for a lot more possibilities on how they can just take the show. And really, you could watch season 1 and season 5 and be like, oh my god, these are completely different shows, but it can be just like that ultimate just like grand finale. Just like this show can live in history as just like one of those shows that like doesn't jump the shark per se, but it kind of reaches its its full circle moment in just like a perfectly just wrapped story. And I think that they could achieve that, because I do think in general the filmmaking is fantastic.
Yeah.
So those are my broad thoughts on that.
I think that I definitely don't think that Jeremy Allen White's going to disappear from the show.
Yeah.
I think that noise is something where his star is just rising and people think that he's going to want to get away, but I get a feeling that he loves this show, and even the familial aspect of what's on the page and on screen is very similar to probably what they feel filming the series.
Yeah.
I don't think they would do this for 4 straight years of filming if they didn't feel that way.
Yeah.
The way that the ending conversation goes, you guys have already touched upon it so much that there's not really much else for me to say. The only thing I did want to bring up is it's such a great again, capping off point of what we've talked about so much in this long review is that it gets to this point where each of these characters find their own restraint in the conversation. And I think that's so important to understand the growth of the characters, because even Carmy gets to a point where Sid is screaming at him and he screams back, but he then lowers his tone. Like he kind of just tries to get her attention to be like, no. Like, just give me a minute. Like I can frame this in the way that I want to frame this. I can explain to you exactly what I'm thinking, and you can understand why I'm making the choice that I'm making. Richie, again, with the nonviolence kind of element of it and getting to this point of being really honest and finally having a real conversation with his cousin about how he was jealous of him and how he was worried that he was going to resent him, and he believed that he had to be defensive because he thought that he was the reason that Carmy never showed up to Mikey's funeral. Like, such beautiful moments. And even Sid, like, in the way that there's so much clutter in her head about how she can't do this, you fucked me over, all this stuff, to get to that final point of like, I can do this if I have somebody here that I can trust. Not that she can't trust Sugar, but it's like Sugar's not there all the time. She has a baby now. It's like she needs somebody in-house that she can feel that this is going to be a 50-50, or this is going to be something where she can fall back on, she can trust somebody and they can trust her. And I just think that's beautiful. And in terms of the future of the show, I agree. I think that this show could really use some breathing room. I think that if we get another season in 2027, even if it's a bit like, maybe if it's, I feel like they're going to want to release it in June because it's just that staple. But even if, I don't know, like let's put out The Bear around Christmas time. Let's do The Bear season 5 around Christmas time in 2027 and give room for them to really work through all these things. Jeremy Allen White has a lot of stuff on the docket. Io is involved in a lot of different things. Eben is the thing now. So there's a lot going on in terms of just the primary cast. And there's a lot of other roles upcoming. I know Tina is going to be in the new Spider-Man movie. Like they're all getting great opportunities, as they should. And even Christopher Storer, like if he wants to work on something in the meantime, I'd love to see him do a smaller character-driven movie. Like, let's get him. Like he's a very talented filmmaker, and I'd love to see kind of what else he has up his sleeve other than what he's done with The Bear. But I agree with what you guys said. I think that there's a lot of runway to that we can go somewhere else with the ending of the show, or if we get a season 5. So excited about that. This has been a long-winded conversation. We've talked about a lot of things.
Yeah.
So it's time for scores. So would you like me to start? Do you have a score in mind? I could start if you guys want to think for a second.
You should start. I know my score, but
okay.
Yeah, I agree.
So I will preface again. I said in the beginning of the review. Initially, when myself, Megan, and Liz did the review, I gave season 3 an 8.9. This is before.
What?
Yes, this is before I was giving roundabout scores of like halves and fulls because I was like, I can't get it to a 9. It's not a 9, but I was like, it's better than the majority of things on TV. Thinking back to that score, and again having to rewatch that season in general, if I had to rescore it today based on my remembrance of it, I'd probably put it more in like the 7.5 category. I still liked it a lot more than I think you and Liz did, but I think that there was a lot of room for improvement. This season, I do think, is still a really good season of TV, but it does have those low points that you talked about. But in reference, it's like if I was going to give season 3 now a 7.5, my score for season 4 is going to be an 8.5. I think that it still has these moments of incredible highs of episodes. If I was scoring an episode, a certain thing, I would give it a 10. Like the wedding episode would be a 10 for me. Personally, the penultimate episode is a 10 for me. There are other moments, even the episode where Sid's father has the heart attack, I think is a very strong episode. So it has those elements that get that score higher. Season 2 is still the standout to me. Like season 2 is a 10 out of 10 for me. So it's not to say that the show can't return to those heights, but there's other things I've seen this year that I just enjoyed more than The Bear. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just I never thought I would say that after watching season 2. I just thought we would kind of climb back up. But it's still a very strong season of TV, in my opinion. I hope we do get a season 5. I hope there is space in between to kind of let us breathe and let the characters breathe a little bit. But it definitely improved for me. Like coming off the first 3 or 4 episodes, I was nervous. I was like very nervous. I was like, this season might not be even as good as I thought season 3 was. And then I thought it got confidently stronger as we went along. So 8.5 out of 10. That is my score for The Bear season 4. Who would like to go next?
I shall give this season, because I'm trying to stay away from decimal scores. So I'm giving it an 8.
Okay.
But it's a strong 8.
If you were giving decimal scores, we might have the same score.
Yeah, exactly. But 8. It's a strong 8. Yeah.
Okay. An 8. Megan? She's going
giving
low.
it a decimal score, not as low as you might think. Because I want to say, based on my memory, that I gave season 3 like a 6 or something.
I think
like
you gave
that.
it like a 6.5. I think you were at like a 6.5.
I'm giving it a 7.5.
Okay.
So
I
it is an improvement. I think it is a little bit lower compared to your like literally that notch lower compared to your scale, just because you feel that much more passionate about it in particular. Like season 3, you felt strongly about or more strong about compared to like Liz and I did.
Yeah.
So I think that's just kind of like the why it's the way that is. But yeah, I mean, I totally agree with everything that you said. Like I still will not give up on The Bear. Even if like maybe my passion has waned for it, like you literally said earlier, I agree, but I feel less attached than I want to feel than I used to feel, but I do think I still haven't given up like my actual genuine like love for this show. I still think it's a great show, but yeah, I'm curious to see what they do.
Yeah,
and I will ride this one out.
Absolutely,
and we need more hype for season 5 when it does come.
Yeah,
because I don't know if it was just me. I saw nothing. Promotion.
Yep.
My friend lives in New York. He was saying that there was promotion everywhere, but I don't know because I saw nothing. Personally.
I think they only announced the date for it about like a month ago.
Yeah.
So like I don't know if we even like it's almost like we forgot about it, and then they were like, let's just put it out to make everybody remember that we did film these seasons back to back. You know, but I do agree. I think that the next time we have to kind of see where they go from here. And I don't know, like, I don't even think they qualify for this year's Emmys. I think it's still season 3. So I don't know. I'm curious to see how they even do with the award shows and things like that. But this has been a long discussion. We hope you guys are still here. We hope you guys stuck around because we enjoyed talking about the show. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Let us know in the comments some of your favorite episodes from the season, some of your favorite moments of the series thus far. If this is the end of the series, where do you think they go from here? All this stuff. As I said, we've been talking for quite a while. Please just like the video, subscribe to the channel, check out all the other stuff we have. All our social media is below me in the video. It's also in our YouTube description. But thank you guys for tuning along and share this with your family and friends. We'd really appreciate it. Just signing off, I'm Darian Scalamoni.
And I'm Vinny Albano.
And I'm Megan Krantz.
And we'll see you guys next time.
This is The Culture.